Hello and welcome back to the Boulder Bookstore YouTube channel. My name is Julia and today I'm going to talk about reader's block. This is an expression I use for that feeling when you just can't get into a book. You can't find a book that speaks to you, you're having trouble feeling that draw to reading. In the last year and a half, it's something I felt very strongly. Unfortunately, it's hard when you're work in a bookstore and like books are everything about what you're working with, and with the stress of the pandemic and everything going on, reading was really hard for me. And I think that there were a lot of people that felt the same way. I think some people swung the other way and all they could do was read. For me, I really struggled with finding a book that really spoke to me during the pandemic. So I'm going to share some books that I read while I was in this kind of situation. I'm kind of still in it, so we'll see how that progresses. But I wanted to share some books that I read while I was feeling this way, and also some tips for how I got myself through it. So first I'm going to start with two books that are regular, books that I would have read anyway, but really helped me feel a connection to reading again while I was struggling with that. First of all was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. This is by V.E. Schwab. I had an ARC of this, an advanced reader copy of this while during the pandemic, pretty early on in the pandemic, during the lockdown portion, the first lockdown portion, and it was exactly what I needed at that point. It's about a girl named Addie LaRue in, I think, 18th century France, who is supposed to get married, and she makes a kind of Faustian deal with a mysterious, dangerous stranger to basically live forever. But the catch, of course, there's always a catch, is that no one will remember her. So the moment she is out of someone's line of sight, they forget her, and she can live forever, but no one ever remembers her. It is a beautiful story, sad, romantic. The part I didn't mention is eventually she comes across a boy in a bookstore who does remember her, and so it's about their relationship, it's about her life not being remembered, and it's fabulous. And it was the kind of book that you take a pause after you finish reading and you just kind of, gather yourself before you can do anything else. Really fantastic, highly recommend. And then the other book that I read that really captured my imagination while the pandemic was going on is A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. This is a book about a magic school, but it's a magic school unlike the kind of magic school you might be familiar with, the most famous magic school, I should say. And it's about a magic school that basically the school is out to get the students. It's a fantastic kind of teen angsty, making deals with each other, trying to survive this magic school where even if you just sit at the wrong table for lunch, you might get gotten by one of these monsters that's infested this school. The next one is coming out, I think, from the filming of this video, just in a couple of weeks. It should be out by the time this video is out. It's absolutely fantastic. Highly, highly recommend this. You'll just whip through it. That's part of what was great about it. It was a fast read, exciting, and really, really fascinating. So sometimes you will find that book that just really captures your imagination, but sometimes you won't. Sometimes you'll just really struggle with, getting that inspiration to read again when you're having this, having a lot of stresses in your life, or just sometimes you're just in a funk and sometimes you just can't find anything that really gets you. So one of the things that I do, and this, has a little bit of maybe a taboo against it, but I don't really care, is rereading. I used to reread a lot more when I didn't work in a bookstore and didn't have, books coming my way all of the time. But I really love rereading. There's something really comforting about a book that you've read a million times, that you just know what's going to happen. There's no surprises. sometimes that's okay, sometimes that's great, and it's really kind of like comfort food. The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern is a book that I reread at least once a year, maybe more. I read it, I think, twice during the, the height of the pandemic. It is one of those books that I find really comforting. It's magical, it, really descriptive, the language is really descriptive. It is comfort food for me. And so if you have a book that you really love, that you like to reread, that might be something that you want to do at a time where you're really struggling to get that inspiration to read. It might not be the Night Circus, but for you it might be something else that just is a comfort food. Maybe a book that you read as a teen or a child that just like really captures your imagination. I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think that taboo against rereading is hogwash. Another thing that I did quite a bit, which I started to do before the pandemic, but I really got into while the pandemic was in its height, is audiobooks. Sometimes, you might not want to just be able to just like sit down on a couch and read, but you could go for a walk and listen to a book. Two books that I listened to during this time were The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. Really magical, romantic, fantastic book if you haven't read it. He also has a new one that just came out recently. Really a really fantastic book. The narrator for the audiobook, I wasn't sure about at first, but as I got into it, he was a fantastic narrator for this book. That is a big thing with audiobooks, is finding that perfect narrator. So I really highly recommend the audiobook version of this book. Really, really was very comforting. And then also I listened to Gideon the Ninth, which we've talked about a few times on this channel. But again, a really, really good narrator for this book. Action-packed, a lot of intrigue and action. I really tore through this in an audiobook form. It was great for commuting. If you haven't checked out Gideon the Ninth, you really should. If you like sci-fi, if you like fantasy, if you like horror, if you like any of those genres, this is a great pick. If you haven't heard of LaRue FM, that is my audiobook source of choice. It works very similar to another audiobook service that will not be named, but you get, basically an audiobook every month, and then discounts on other audiobooks, but you select a independent bookstore that your purchases support. We would obviously love if you supported Boulder Bookstore, but you can pick any bookstore that is near you to support. My last suggestion, I think I have two suggestions, is maybe trying a different form. If a novel is too intimidating, too much for, how you're feeling at that moment, maybe try short stories. I'm a big Stephen King fan, as probably a lot of you know from other videos I've done. I really enjoy Different Seasons, which has a lot of those kind of classic Stephen King short stories that you might be familiar with, like Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption, which was the inspiration for the movie Shawshank Redemption. Also, The Body, which was the inspiration for Stand By Me, which is one of my absolute favorite films. So short stories are another great way. If, there's not a lot of, you can just pick up the book and read one short story, or, they're a little bit more digestible. They're a little bite-sized bit of reading that might be less, be less intimidating than trying to finish an entire novel. And then similarly along the same lines, poetry is a great tool that I used during this past year and a half. I was reading a Sylvia Plath biography, and so I picked up Sylvia Plath's book of poetry, Ariel, kind of reading along. But it's a great way to just dip your toe in reading again, reading one poem a night. And also graphic novels. I think graphic novels also get a little bit of a bad rap, and I think that they shouldn't. Graphic novels are absolutely fantastic. They've been fantastic for quite some time. This one is Mooncakes, a really fantastic magical story of a young witch and her best friend who's a werewolf, and they fight rising evil. There's lots of fantastic graphic novels out there for pretty much any taste, but they're, beautifully, many of them are beautifully illustrated, and it's a great way of having that feeling of digesting a story that way without the pressure of a novel. And then I think my last little tidbit of advice, and something that I've tried to do with myself, is just give yourself a break. Don't be too hard on yourself. Reading is supposed to be fun and supposed to be, for me at least, relaxing and enjoyable. I have always loved reading, and so I try to give myself a break. If I'm having, if the world is stressful right now, maybe, streaming Netflix is really the way to go. Listening to podcasts might be the way to go. Maybe that's okay for right now. So trying to give myself a break, give yourself a break. But hopefully some of these suggestions help you break through that funk, that reading funk that you're feeling, if you're feeling that like me. And if you have any suggestions, anything that helps you when you're having that reader's block, leave them down in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. I'd love more suggestions. And I hope you take care of yourself. And if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do. We do videos every week, and we'd love to see you there.